Welcome to the Packard paddock. Today I'm going to be discussing fixing up, cleaning up rocker arms. I'm going to work on fixing up a lifter. As you can see, it's still kind of dirty. I've already done quite a bit of cleaning on it. Essentially what I do to clean it, I had a lot of dirt and oil on it. Just use a brass brush, a little bit of lacquer thinner, and then scrub the outside like that. It takes off a lot of the old grease. The part was then scrubbed. To knock the bushing out, what I do is I put a 3/4 inch socket in my vise level with the top of the vise. Makes a receiver for the bushing. Here's the bushing. And I lay that on top. And I have sitting here a bushing press remover. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this part to the point where the old brazing melts. It doesn't take very long. Give it a good heating. Now we'll take our little bushing remover, tap the old bushing out into the socket. Careful not to touch the metal, by the way, it's extremely hot now. I'm then going to quench these parts. Here's the old bushing. You can see it's quite hot, gets quenched. Lovely. Now you can take a little pry bar, and we're going to pry this bushing holder out. There we go, we've disassembled it. To clean up the parts, to rebraze them, I hit them with a little medium grit emery cloth. The goal of this is not to get rid of all of the old brazing, but to smooth out all the imperfections that are left, so we end up with a nice smooth surface for the new brazing material to move in. You know, something like that. You can see on this part, there's a pretty big chunk of old brazing solder sitting there. Again, just going to take that down with a file. I'll then just scrub the outside of this again with emery cloth, and I'll do the same to the inside. And I'll make sure that the inside is nice and shiny, clean, and smooth. You don't want to forget when you're polishing these things up, make sure you get these little half moon areas good and clean, because that's where you're going to be applying the brazing material. Clean the ends of the rocker arm. What I'm going to use is a piece of emery cloth that I'm putting on the edge of my drill press here. It's got a little lip. Then I can run that across the emery cloth. Last step, use the wire wheel. Give it a final polish on all the parts. Do a final polish on the inside of this collar. I'm going to use a Dremel on high speed with a wire brush on the end. Just polish that right up. Now once the parts are cleaned, the next thing you have to do is apply flux. The flux is an antioxidant in a sort of paste form. Keeps oxides from forming, allows the solder to migrate in through capillary action across the entire piece. It aids the flow of the solder, if you will. And then the parts are put together. This gets inserted, and this gets inserted. And you'll see a little bit of the flux kind of comes out off the part. That's okay. And then, make sure our water's hot. Should be pretty close to boiling. Repeated it. Okay, that's boiling. That's plenty hot enough. That's what we're going to quench our parts in once we finish it, and that gets rid of the excess flux. And then we're going to heat this. And heat it until flux turns white initially, and then it turns clear. That usually indicates that they're hot enough. It starts to smoke a little bit. That's plenty heated. Right into the part. Putting it on both sides. And it'll go all the way around the part. You don't really need to worry about doing it in more than just these two places. Over. Gonna let that cool for just a hair. It's a little off, isn't it? There we go. Let that cool just a little bit so that the silver solidifies, so the part's not going to move anymore. Doesn't take very long. Then to get rid of the flux, the excess flux, tip it carefully, and then quench it in the hot water. That'll get rid of the excess. Still hotter than a pistol, but you can see it doesn't move. There's your part. Alright, the part is cooled. I can touch it. See, it is quite solidly put together now. Nicely brazed. I'm going to clean that up with a wire wheel, and I'll be done. Once the whole thing's done, I then do one last step, which is I immerse it in kerosene, a little bucket of kerosene. Parts go into there so they don't rust until installation. And every day I'll come by and spin the little wheel, a roller, make sure that we dissolve any remaining stuff that might be in those needle bearings. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it somewhat informative.